Satnam, Satnam yogis and yoginis. So I was talking about twice lost and twice found, and I will cut the other bit because of the microphone. But twice lost and twice found is about a loss of love, a loss of faith, a loss of discipline or commitment, or the spiritual path, something that we have, and we're gonna frame it from a spiritual perspective, but it could be like a wider concept. But it's an idea that there is something there, and then we lose it and we gain it 2 times. And we will go into detail why does this happen 2 times. But first of all, the phrase twice lost, twice found, it already implies that before we lose it for the first time, we already had it. So let's consider this for a moment. When we talk about children, there is something incredible in children, and therefore we have to, when we talk about children, we have to realize we were children once as well. No, if I assume I'm talking to an adult, so there was something in us as well. And this, let's think about children like an external thing, but then let's think about us as children. Yeah. So children have this incredible capacity to connect to magic and to innocent love, and in some ways, deep innate wisdom, though it is very unconscious the way they have it. But sometimes they will say something that is so clear and apparent to them, and for us who are blinded from many years of conditioning, it is not so clear, but once we put ourselves into their vision of what they are looking at, it becomes evident. Children have this capacity for joy that is incredible. A child, you can give them a stick and they can be happy for an afternoon, right? Very, very early innocent childhood, yeah? Because very soon, as soon as we start to make more complex games and even give them access to technology, they start to be less satisfied with just a simple stick. But on the very early stages, you can just give them one thing, and it can be enough for a whole afternoon. Bubbles, making bubbles. It can be so magical for them that it's just an enormous amount of joy. For us as adults, it's hard to find that amount of joy with just a simple thing like making bubbles, though it's certainly possible. But there is something when you are a child and then that something is lost. There is something about looking through the eyes of a child, like the first time they see bubbles and then it's lost. I remember learning how to draw, and I was already 20-something years old, 23 or 24. And I thought I didn't know how to draw. So I found some books and I was trying to teach myself to convince myself that was a false assumption that I had on myself. Doesn't matter how it arose. It's just that I was doing these exercises from this book, a lovely book. And then I remember that you have to look in a particular way in order to draw that. You have to train yourself to look in that way. I would say like the artist's eye. You have to train the artist's eye. So I had been doing all these exercises to train myself to see in that way. And I was going to go meet my friend. We were going to go to the cinema. And she was a little bit late. And it was raining. We were in Scotland. And the rain was creating these pools of water on the ground. And in these pools of water, I could see reflected the lights of the buildings in front. And suddenly, I could see it. And I could really see it. And I remember the exercises from this book, they were telling us how, if they say, draw a face, and we draw 2 eyes, which look like almonds, and the nose, and we draw what we think it's a face. We draw what we have stored, the symbols that we have stored in our heads on what a face is. But we don't draw the face that we see. We try to make the face the symbols look kind of what we see, but at the end, you look at it, is like a child's drawing, but about child's drawing, and you're like an adult and you think, oh my God, I really don't know how to draw a face. But that's because we are not really looking at the face. We see an eye and we draw the symbol that we have in our heads of what an eye is. So you have to train yourself to get out of that and truly see what there is. So I remember being there in the rain, waiting for my friend, looking at those pools of water and seeing clearly every color, every shape, every line, every thing that was so clear. And it was like a waking up after many years of seeing in a particular way and suddenly seeing things. And I realized that you can access that form of vision anytime, but we don't do it. We don't train ourselves to do it unless you have trained yourself to do it, or you are an artist already and you never lost it. And then I would question, if you didn't lose it, maybe there is the path to be done also in the art. Not just love, but also art. And your art is probably also twice lost and twice found. So I remember seeing that way, and my friend arrived, and I was seeing her coming in the rain, and I was like noticing all the shapes of her, and even her face. And what I thought was eyes, it was not just eyes. There was all these lines that were making her eye. It was really profound, and at the same time, from the outside, you would not know that anything was happening to me, but to me, within, it was very special. And then noticing a bush, and the leaves were not green. They were all sorts of colors. And there was all sorts of shades and darks, and there were even some purples and yellows in it. And I was like, leaves are green, so I was only seeing green until that switch happened. No? So that's an example of how you can find something that you have lost it before. And when you are a child, I believe you don't know you have it, but you have that kind of vision. You have that capacity to see a bubble, a soap bubble, right, floating, and be mesmerized by that and touched by that and feel the love of that amazing thing and the magic touching you. So children, when we were children, we had this incredible capacity to connect with these things. Love is pure, is innocent, and devotion is natural. It's like a natural state. And I don't know why today I feel more personal, so I will share some things more of my personal life. I don't often do it, but sometimes I feel it. And when I was little, I had a very strong connection to the Virgin Mary. And we had a little painting of her by my bedside, behind me, right, when I was laying in bed. And when my parents would put me to sleep, and I would say goodnight, and then I would pretend to fall asleep, and they would go away. And when the lights were off, I would get up and give her a kiss and get back into the bed. And I remember like a very sweet thing, and I felt the connection to her. And if anything was wrong in my life, if there was some pain or some suffering, I could just extend my hand and hold her. And I could feel like I was holding the Virgin Mary's hand, like she was my mother, kind of. And she was guiding me, and she was taking me by the hand, and nothing was wrong, and everything was fine, and the joy would fill my heart. And that was so natural, so easy to do, that if any day I was feeling pain, I could just remember her, and it would just happen naturally. And I remember once having a conversation with my mother, and I was around 5 or 6 years old, and I was trying to tell her this feeling that I have, and trying to explain to her. It's like somebody tells you the best joke in the world, and you are laughing inside, but you don't laugh outside. You're just laughing inside. And she was like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I just think of Mary, and then this thing happens." And I couldn't explain how I was getting there. And sadly, a few years later, I remember one day I was having a bad day and was trying to connect to that feeling, and that feeling had disappeared. I don't know if that feeling only stays for the first 7 years of your life, I know that there is these cycles, and every 7 years something changes, and the first 7 years are where you are more intimate with the divine still, because your soul is just arriving. But I remember that I lost it. So the first time we lose it, we don't even realize when we lose it. And again, it can be a number of things, yeah? But this is a good example. Your devotion, your love, your connection to the divine, something magical, something beyond yourself. And somehow, we don't know when we lose it. That inner joy that a child has with a stick or with a bubble, someday you give them a stick or a bubble and they don't feel that joy anymore. So that is lost, and we don't know how that happens. I would imagine that that's because the ego is fully formed by the 7 years old, yeah? By 3.5 is kind of consolidated, and by 7 years old is like, that's it. It's taking over the major thinking functions of the brain, and therefore also controlling the feelings and so on. So the first time we lose something, we don't realize we lose it. And then we go into a quest, trying to find that innocence. Yeah, I'm thinking now, I don't know why, but of course, my background is Christian, right? I was brought up in a Christian country. So this saying from Jesus, be like little children. I wonder if that's what he meant, right? To be like children who can have that innocence, that capacity to have joy with a stick and just be happy and innocently love their parents, love those around them. And that innocence can quickly turn into naivety, and people take advantage of you, and then there is all sorts of suffering that can arise from that. But by protecting yourself not to suffer and to avoid being abused, then we close ourselves, we create that cocoon of the ego, and we lose that contact with that innocence within. Then we go around feeling guilty in some way, because when you lose the innocence, then there's the guilt and the shame, yeah? And you don't know why, and maybe guilt overrides other feelings, but it's also like, you may feel guilty about whatever you want, but there is one guilt, which is the guilt of assuming your identity as the ego and losing the connection to the soul. And we are responsible for that, right? And maybe we don't realize it because we have lost the connection to the soul. The soul now arrived, but now the ego took over, and somehow, because we are not connected to it, we cannot even say what we are missing. We just feel that we are missing something, that something has been lost, but we cannot phrase it, we cannot explain it, we cannot say it. That's late childhood and into adolescence, we experience that loss. And that loss triggers our maturity as well, and that's a necessary loss. So if somebody now hearing this is thinking, well, how can I do it to bring up my children so that they don't feel that loss? That's not possible. And that's actually not probably advisable, because we have to go through that loss, and we have to go through the found. Because the children are happy, but they don't know they are happy. They are joyful, but they don't really realize what incredible it is, what they are feeling. They feel love, but they don't realize how amazing it is that they have this connection to pure love. And it's only by losing that we realize it. So the loss has to happen. So the loss happens. And then someday, as you are going through adolescence, maybe you have a connection to something higher. There is a moment when the spirit or the soul comes back and it touches, knocks on your door, and you have a possibility to reconnect with that. And that's when the opportunity arises for you to reconnect to the divine. And some people will take it. And then maybe you discover yoga, as an example, yeah? And you are, for a moment, you are in love with yoga, yeah? You discover, wow, this is incredible. Yoga is amazing. Yoga, this is what I needed. This is what I wanted. This is what I've always needed, and I didn't know I needed it. And so you kind of fall in love with that is because you have found something. Through yoga, you find the connection to the divine. You find the connection to your love, to yourself, to your real self, not the ego, but the real self and the soul. And so you start trusting in the practice, and you start increasing your practice, and it feels real. As opposite to the ego, which is a false identity by definition. It feels real, and that's amazing feeling. So this is the first found, yeah? So we've gone through the first lost, and now we found it. And when you find it for the first time, not because the first time you already had it from birth, that was already given by the blessing of being born in this life. But when you find it for the first time after losing it, is a part of you is like, I never want to lose this again. Yeah, it's like when I was in the rain, looking at the city like that, and looking at my friend from the artist eye. Yeah, just like seeing things, almost feeling like for the first time. It wasn't for the first time, but I had forgotten how you could see the world. And seeing it like that, and it's like, I don't want to lose that. I want to be able to do it. And for a moment, you realize that this is something special that anyone could do, but you don't do it consciously. So I train myself. I say, okay, I'm not going to lose this. And then for a while you have it. But this is what happens. We try to hold on to that. It's like when you start doing yoga, you hold on to that because yoga is so special. You don't want to lose. You don't want to lose that connection to the spirit and the soul and the divine and all that. So I'm going to do my practice. I'm going to do my yoga, and I'm not going to let it go. And for a while, it is like that. For a while, you hold on to that incredible feeling, incredible joy of having found it again, and the falling in love, yeah, with the practice. But that cannot be held forever, because the material ego becomes kind of, it can happen in two ways. One, the spiritual ego triggers, and you can become proud of having found it, and then the pride also diverts you towards the karma, again, not the dharma, and slowly you lose it without realizing. Then you do yoga as more than a discipline and an inner practice to recognize your truth. Is more about trying to show off and maybe look at me, how flexible I am, or how disciplined I am, or how many meditations can I do in a day, or how many chakras do I have open, or something silly like that. And it is silly. But for a moment we think, oh yeah, I'm getting enlightened, right? And that's the spiritual ego, the ego on another level. But even if we don't go in that way, even if we don't, that's already losing it again. But even if we don't go in that way, just holding on to that truth by itself is unsustainable. I'll explain why. Because the first time when you were a child and you lost that truth, you didn't realize you lost it. We didn't realize we lost it, right? We lost that capacity to see. We lost that capacity to love. And we didn't realize it. And it's only as an adult, when we are conscious now and we look back and we realize, when I was a child, I had that incredible connection to the Virgin Mary. Where did I lose it? I don't know, but can I regain it? Can I find it again? Can I connect again? And even if it's not her, maybe it's to the divine in another form, for me, my guru, right? But how can I find that connection? And then we make a conscious effort to reconnect, and then we start discipline ourselves and doing the yoga or whatever, walks in nature, or maybe it is painting, maybe it's through art that you find it, whatever it is, it can be. And then we find it, and we don't want to lose it. This is the first time we find it. Yeah, we find it, we don't want to lose it, we want to hold on to it. But the thing is, the first time we lost it, we didn't realize we were losing it. We were not conscious of how it happened that we lost it. And now we know that we can find it, but we don't know how we can lose it. And because we don't know how we lost it the first time, at some point, we lose it again. So it's kind of unavoidable that even though you found it and you want to hold on, you don't want to let it go, but it would be extremely, extremely rare. 1 in a billion, trillion people who could find it, and just never lose it again. It's, okay, we are in the doubt, and now we find the truth, and at some point we go back to the doubt. And without yoga, without the spiritual teachers, maybe you hear about all these abuses that the the yogi teachers abuse their students, their position of power, abuse of money, sexual abuse, whatever. You realize all these things that are happening even in the spiritual world, and somehow you are like, what the hell, this is just the same. So you question the veracity of those people, and therefore, so maybe this is all just, I'm just, I don't know, hypnotized by this new thing called yoga. So you doubt, and the moment the doubt enters, then you lose that connection. So you found it, you fell in love with it, but because you didn't know how you lost it, then in one way or another, through the spiritual ego or through doubt of what is truth, whatever, then you lose it again. And you think, well, it's all the same. Even yoga is a business, it's a marketplace, and you can, are you good at shopping, right? What is this? What the hell is this? This is not what I thought it was. And then that's it, we lose it, yeah? But now we know how we lost it. And we also know how we found it the first time. So even though it's a tragedy because you were falling in love with something incredible, your love, falling in love with love again, yeah? And it was beautiful, and you wanted to hold on to that. You didn't want to lose that. But now you lose it. But the moment that you lose it, you realize that you're losing it. If it's not the very moment, maybe a little bit later, but you were conscious, you're an adult now, you have a different vision, you have a consciousness to watch what's happening and realize that you are losing it. So the moment you are losing it again, then you can realize it and realize what happened for you to lose it. Like this doubt creeping in, or the spiritual ego pretending, being proud of being a yogi or something like that. So because you realize how you lost it, you can, if you are capable of facing the truth and challenging your ego and humbly, go back to how you found it for the first time. Because you know how you found it the first time, so you can go back. And the second time you find it, twice lost, twice found. The second found is easier because you know the path to get there. It's challenging anyway, because this whole spiritual path is challenging in general, but it's easier because we know we have been there already and we know we can get there. It's like losing the capacity to see, like the artist. And for a while you've been training yourself to keep it, but then you lose it. Years later, I remember when I was learning how to draw. That was quite special. I could see things differently. I had forgotten about it. And then someday you start to ask yourself, can I train myself to go back to that spot? And of course you can, because you did it the first time, so it's easier. And then you can find it again. But now you know how you lost it the first time. It was through my doubt. It was through whatever, my mind game that I played in that time. Now I'm aware. And if you are aware, there's no guarantee, but there is a possibility that through that awareness, you don't lose it again. Yeah, it's twice lost, twice found. It doesn't mean that it cannot be lost a third time and then find it again a third time, or a fourth or a fifth. Of course, it can happen many times, but at least 2 times, that's the general rule. And then when you try lost, twice found, on the second find, when you find it for the second time, the possibility is there that because you know how you lost it the other time, not to lose it again and just stay with that. Twice lost, twice found. So let me just guide a few minutes of meditation based on this. I'm just inspired to put the hands on the heart. And if you can, close your eyes and go to the heart, your inner child's heart, the heart of your inner child. And if you've been listening to this, you may feel a vibration, a calling, an inner passion within the heart of the child inside that is telling you that you were in love when you were little, that you were with a deep devotion, that you did experience magic and the divine inside. For me, the image is like reaching up with my hand, like going back to holding Mary's hand. Yeah? But for you, maybe something different. But can you reach out to that? And you will see that form of love, like the Divine Mother, is just waiting for you to reconnect, waiting to embrace you. Innocent and pure, and just don't doubt it. Whatever you are feeling, just don't doubt it. Just go into it. And even if sometimes we feel really far away, the Divine is just here, just waiting for us to connect. And realize that this place that you are reaching inside, that this sensation, you can call upon it anytime. You can, anytime you want, anytime you need, you can just go back to this place and find it undisturbed, waiting for you. And the Divine is ready to receive you, like the long-lost child who comes back home and embrace you. May we never lose it again. Bless you. Thank you very much.